church that, was a little bit smaller, that kind of had this vision to kind of grow, and this was always a very exciting thing for us to jump into. But I think when people kind of said, well, Heritage Green, I think to me, who lives on Hamilton Mountain, was kind of very much, where is Heritage Green? I've never heard of it. I think for the most part, we liked, I guess we were a little nervous about coming, knowing that it was also a small congregation. Kind of, could it grow and could it be kind of a visible light in the community? And so I think to us, I think as soon as we started thinking about, well, this church, who are these Heritage Green people? What is the vision? What's it going to be? Will our family fit in? Is it all right if my daughter wears princess dresses running around the congregation? A lot of questions for us. And I think anytime someone thinks of something new, they really want to dig in and try to figure out who these people are. So like anyone, when we started talking about Heritage Group, we said, let's go check it out. And I very much stopped the church. I kind of drove by at night, and I drove by during the day, and I went to the parking lot, and I peeked in the windows, and I'm like, who are these people? And is this kind of a place for us? Yeah, exactly. That was me peeking in the windows. Anyway, so it was very much a, how do we fit? And Sarah had a story the other day for me that was very much kind of painted that story for me. She talked about a restaurant that was probably a 3-minute walk from our house. And she had kind of said, well, I just happened upon this restaurant. It's just around the corner. Never seen it. I happened to walk into it, and I was actually really surprised. It was very nice. There was kind of like a waterfall, and just looked like a nice place to be. And it's kind of I kind of feel like that's, in a way, the story of Heritage Green, in that very wonderful church, very wonderful people, but not necessarily noticeable as you're driving by. Anyway, so, to me, that was some of my thoughts as I started to come here. I started looking at the building, started looking at, some of the issues, signage, lighting. I love the picture of, I'm trying to see if I've got these pictures in order here. See if I can run this remote here. Try that. There we go. Anyway, I've got a picture just in a few minutes, but very much at night, this building is completely invisible. And I think a lot of people, when they started talking about Heritage Green, or if you're trying to direct someone to Heritage Green, it's very much about the landmark of, okay, oh yeah, the church is at Isaac Brock and Mud Street. It's right across from the fire hall, and that is something that it's very hard to kind of see where you're at, where the church is, and really at night, I played with the kind of idea with Session that it was kind of like a Where's Waldo theme. You kind of go, where is the church? Oh, it is there, you just can't see it. Just get to there, drive into the lot, you'll find the building. But anyway, so early in January, David and I chatted about this, and we kind of met about the idea of, what would we need to do to rebrand kind of the outside of the church? How do we get people to notice us? And a lot of ideas came up, and we played with a lot of ideas. Lighting was an obvious. There was a building there. It's actually a very wonderful property. Nice building. It's huge, but you don't quite see it. So there's lighting and signage. What else could we do? Could we just clean up some of the trees and bushes that are kind of hiding half the building? We're kind of still mid-process with some of those things right now. Painting the lot. Could we put basketball nets in? What else could we do for the community that would be actually helpful and beneficial for the property, for the people around us, for the church? So we played with a lot of ideas, and in early, probably mid-February, we came to Session to kind of talk about the concepts, and I think for the most part, people were pretty excited about the idea of doing something. I know that kind of the history of the church was very much, we've been here, we've kind of struggling, but as this new vision has been growing, people are kind of coming to the church, and I think there's this excitement that's been growing in the church, and I think a lot of the Session members wanted to kind of advertise that, hey, something's going on here, and this could be something really, really good for us to do, make sure that people know that something's going on. Anyway, so we talked about a lot of ideas, and we went off from there to kind of start digging into it. A lot of these things would be based off cost. And so depending on what those costs might be to do some of these things, lighting and signage or other things, that would probably dictate what we ended up doing. So we started going through a bunch of ideas, and we played we played with a lot, and I'm not quite sure if you can see all the details, but could it be just flower beds or signage? You've got a bus stop right across the road, for example. Can you just put signage out that's now going to start talking to the community so that we can be a little more effective in getting people to notice that we're here and something is happening here. So. One of the things that kind of came up in the process as we started looking through the details was, signage. We wanted to have effective signage, but as we started going through getting quotes, and as we started going through and figuring out what that could look like, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what we might need. Some of the costs ended up being a little bit higher than we hoped for, and so we started looking at, how do we prioritize this list? If you look at some of the signage that we do have signage. There is actual signage there. Some of the signage I didn't even know for probably 3 or 4 months that it was even there. If you asked people kind of where we are at or who we are as a building, they would come back to us and say, oh, it's a child care facility. It probably has something to do with tutoring, math, and reading. I'm pretty sure it's a knowledge tree. So it's interesting to know that there is signage in and around the building, but it in no way kind of points to kind of who we are. They do have the sign on the Isaac Brock side, but hard to kind of see, it doesn't jump out at you in any way. And probably the most effective sign we had for the knowledge tree, that place hasn't been here for years. So, we looked at a lot of what we had, and as we started to look at what we needed for new signage, we were trying to figure out what would be most effective so that when we looked at those costs, we could decide, where their value would be. We spent a lot of time going through the signage needs. David and I, and actually Alex, using his height, we spent a lot of time just driving around the area, looking at what other signage was here. We walked around with a tape measure trying to figure out, what size sign do we need, what type of sign. So we actually went and measured signs. We were walking around kind of the new construction area across the road. We also, David and I'd like to do a lot of Photoshop, so we Photoshopped a lot of images in. We were back and forth with the signage company many, many times trying to figure out what would we want for signage, because that would actually dictate what the cost would be, and therefore help us decide overall what we needed to do kind of on a larger project side. There was so we also sat and discussed many of these changes with Karen on the childcare side as well. We discussed what would her wish list look like for changes on the property, for the building, whether or not it's lighting, signage, or any other ideas. So we talked a lot with Karen as well. She was kind of really excited to see us moving forward as a church. We also talked in that process with Karen about possible grant programs that might be available, and then from there we also looked into other grant programs that might be available to us. So Karen has access every year to money that's available for improvements to her space. We also looked into, there is an energy grant that we have available to us for retrofitting the existing indoor lighting, as well as we looked into other things, like there's the Taro grant, which is the landfill that's close to us. They have grants, community grants for us, and so we looked at a lot of those, and some of those things are still ongoing as to kind of whether or not these are options for us. But we spent a fair bit of time looking into that. Anyway, so we started putting together all these lists. We kind of started to have an idea of what that might look like, what we wanted to do. David and I met kind of to prioritize the list. We wanted to make sure that we were using money effectively. We knew that there was a fair bit of funding happening with the church already. A lot of what's happening here already is being funded by many groups, and so we wanted to make sure that we were very conscious of that. We wanted to be very good stewards of what we have available to us and making sure that we were aligned with what God was leading us to do. We had some detailed discussions. We kind of met again with Session in mid-April to discuss all that we had put together. We had an initial budget, and that initial budget was really, we could spend anywhere from $20,000, $80,000, you could keep going. You could continually want to do more and more. So it was one of those things where we had an idea where we wanted to go, we wanted to discuss it with Session. And so we did talk about that, and I think we all kind of came up to a number and a set list of things that we'd like to do. Some of these things, there was even some conflict in that process, but it was very healthy conflict, and it was something that we very much had a lot of people coming forward and speaking as a result of their prayer time and their thinking through the different projects. And it was actually a very, very fruitful process. I think we all feel very settled and very excited that this is very much a God-led process. So we went through, and there was a lot of discussion on it with session. As we went through those discussions, we kind of came out with a final list of projects, and most of them focus in and around the lighting and signage. Small things like the cleaning up of brush and small improvements here and there, those are kind of on the list, but the main part of the project we're really discussing is lighting and signage. We looked at a lot of different sign designs. We worked with a signage company to kind of come forward with lots of ideas, and again, as I mentioned, David and I like to fiddle with graphics, so we played with a lot of ideas. We ended up coming out with some pretty clear ideas of what this would be. One thing that we were trying to figure out in the process was, do we want a digital sign? Could there be value in spending money on a digital sign? We liked the idea of talking to the community. Could we advertise events? Could we just put up messages to kind of people driving by, which, we're not necessarily inviting them into the building in any way. We're just trying to help them out. We're trying to find ways to bless the community. And so we went through that process of what that would look like. In our lighting discussions, I think we came to what we needed fairly quick. We have existing lighting in place in a lot of spots. A lot of it's just not working. There's a lot of other lighting discussions that we had just about having better visibility from the road. As mentioned, it's kind of hard to see the building. So we've tried to figure out what that would need to look like. This is just a quick map of what that lighting would be. And so really what this is, I'll quickly walk you through it because it's hard to see from that diagram, but we have existing lighting off the building. We wanted to replace that with more efficient and more effective lighting. We have lot lighting right now, it just doesn't work, so we looked at replacing that. We have the perimeter of the building, which does have some lights coming down from it, but we wanted to basically add a whole lot more lighting. And all of this lighting that we were looking at was LED lighting. Kind of very efficient, very low maintenance. And we also looked, as well as the building and the lot, we looked at possible uplighting to a lot of the trees. We have, again, as I mentioned, very nice property, very nice trees, and we thought even by using uplighting along the Isaac Brock side and some of the trees on the front of the building, we thought that would really add to the effect and help us get noticed in the community. We also talked about lighting on I'm always trying to figure out, do you call it a steeple or a spire? Spire, the tall pointy thing on the top of this building. Anyway, we talked about lighting that up as well. When I was driving around the community many months back, I was really trying to figure out what would be useful, and I happened to be in the community kind of, I guess, south of here, and I looked down and I saw this church, and the spire stood out, but it wasn't our church. And I'm like, here we are in our community, but we're not necessarily being noticed even from a distance, so we looked at that as well. In our electrical work and in kind of looking what we need to do with lighting, we went through, we mapped out our current load, we mapped every outlet and every switch that we had in the building, and we went through and decided that yes, we do have the ability to kind of add more lighting. So we walked through that. We looked at other additional work to be done, say in the sanctuary. There's a couple things here with the projectors and some light control inside this building. And I think we feel fairly confident that any lighting and signage that we add will not really increase our operating costs. The fact that we're moving to the LED fixtures really means that we're adding a whole lot of lighting with pretty much the same load, which is exciting to know that it's not going to cost us more to be that much more visible. Where we ended up with the signs, we wanted to find something that was that felt like it fit with who we are. It felt like it fit with the building itself and who we are. We ended up not going the digital sign route this time, but this sign is actually structured, and I think in the booklet that David put together, it actually kind of details out, a section that can actually be swapped out later for an LED sign if we want to. So portions of this sign, it's an LED backlit sign, an LED backlit sign that will be very visible at night. This type of sign, the style of the sign will really pop. As someone's driving by kind of the Mud Street road, it'll be very obvious that they'll see us. The sections that are kind of below the main logo on that sign, highlight our services, how to kind of connect with us either through our website or phone number, and then there's a portion there for the childcare. But those kind of center sections talking about those things can be pulled out, and a digital sign can be popped in place. So it's been designed in a way that it can be modified in future, that if we're continuing to grow and we still feel like there might be value for that in future, that it's ready for us to do that. The other sign is really the current Isaac Brock sign. We looked at replacing the sign, but just, again, based off cost, we said, well, of course we can replace the sign, but do we need to? And so we looked at just replacing the inserts, the plexiglass inserts. So it's the existing sign structure, just fixed. And with this, there's a lot of electrical cleanup and fixes to do, and that's part of the electrical work that we've lined up. But getting the sign working again and replacing the plexiglass faces on those. And we played with a design that's currently displayed there right now, and we think that that'll really, again, catch people's attention. Hopefully with the sight lines that we've opened up with our trimming work, it'll be very easy to see all these signs as people are moving, whether or not it's the Isaac Brock side or the Mud Street side. Our hope is that this new signage will catch a lot of attention, and we're not necessarily expecting this is going to bring a ton of people in, but at least people know where we're at. They see that something that's exciting is happening. They see that there are changes. To the public, hopefully we become relevant. It's not just a older church that's just struggling along. This is a church that's moving forward and has some exciting stuff happening at it. Just for where we're at on the process side, we are still going through. We're wanting to, David will talk to you in a minute just about how we'll fundraise for this project. What that will look like, and obviously some of the decisions to be made here and some of the changes that we've just kind of quickly detailed, some of that will depend on the money that we're able to raise. I'm kind of excited for it in that it's an opportunity for us to do something with what we have available to us. Many times I'm always looking for ways I can contribute. David will go through that, but once that's figured out, we will have a bunch of steps to go through. We'll have to submit for variance to actually place the signs where we want the new sign on the Mud Street side. Once all of that happens, we're expecting kind of early fall, a lot of these changes will start happening. We'll start getting the electrical done. We've lined up contractors for most of this work up to this point. We've had many quotes come in on all of the work so that we can compare options. But we're kind of hoping that as we move forward that we'll see these changes starting to happen early September, maybe even some electrical work even before then, depending on timing. But I tried to do a quick Photoshop of what the property looks like right now, and then I tried to Photoshop what it would look like with lighting, but it's not as bright as I hoped it would be. So just imagine this is much brighter, and you're very wowed. Anyway, this is the view of the church from the Mud Street side, and this is kind of what it could be with lighting. Just imagine it's much brighter, and maybe you could say "wow" or something. Yeah, it's very bright. Anyway, so. With this, I really think that this is the church will stand out. I mentioned this once before to the session group. From a property perspective, like from a business side, I look at this property as a very impressive property. We have great visibility. So the potential for us to kind of generate some talk in the neighborhood is really high. And again, I've got one more. And this one you can see a little bit better because of the sign, but again, hopefully as people drive up and down the street, they're noticing the church from a very far distance. It's very obvious that the sign is visible and clear. So I'm excited for this in that I just know that people will talk about this new church that just showed up. Obviously people who live in the area might know about it, but again, we want to tell the community that we're kind of alive, there's a vision here. God's leading this church, and hopefully it's an exciting thing for all of us. But yeah, I think that's it for me, David.
Hello? All right, there I am. Scott has just done like a ton of work for us, and I just think a round of applause would be super appropriate. Thank you so much.